What's the bottom line on safety, quality, fuel efficiency and a great deal on a Nissan? Maxima Refinement and Luxury from only $34,995. And the new model Tita 1.8, the roomier small passenger car from $23,995. Micra, the small car that's big on fuel efficiency from only $15,990. Don't miss out on these fantastic deals. Visit your nearest Nissan dealer today. That's the bottom line.
Kia ora, good evening. I'm Carolyn Robinson.
I'm Alastair Wilkinson. Tonight on 3 News, tragedy on the Manukau.
And a nightmare for a 9-year-old boy as his mother and sister drown before his eyes.
Why it's game, set and match against David Benson Pope and what the woman who aced him had to say about him.
The callous new tactic that's been devised by suicide bombers in Iraq using mentally handicapped human bombs.
And Auckland's new motorway bus lanes are open, but not without a hiccup and a catch for schools.
This is 3 News.
A 9-year-old boy has been found on the Manukau mudflats after he spent hours huddled in the dark beside the bodies of his 6-year-old sister and their mother. His father had already struggled out in search of help. They'd been wading and looking for fish at a spot called Seagrove and became separated in the early hours of the morning. Tristram Clayton is there with more details. Tristram.
Carolyn, the family of 4 went looking for flounder at about 11 o'clock last night, and it wasn't until 3 a.m. this morning that they became separated at the mouth of the Whatapaka Inlet, about 2 kilometres from where they were eventually brought to shore. The tragic end to a family fishing trip that became a family nightmare. Instead of returning home with a bin full of flounder, a 42-year-old mother and her 6-year-old daughter were themselves dragged from the mud of the Manukau harbour. The tragedy began when the father, the only one with the torch, became separated in the darkness from his wife, daughter and 9-year-old son.
Dad heard the children cry, so he spent a bit of time trying to find them. When he had no luck finding them, he had to travel a fair distance, 1 or 2 kilometres, so that he could raise the alarm and let the authorities know.
The time that took meant search and rescue teams now faced an incoming tide and 3 missing people who had no life jackets and no torches.
With Westpac helicopter and their night vision gear, even a cigarette lighter or a cell phone light, even that they can pick that up from 5 miles away. So if they would have had even a small torch, the chance of them being found would have been a lot higher.
At around 9 in the morning, the police helicopter found the missing group. They'd been swept 2 kilometres from the mouth of the inlet where they'd been separated.
They found the boy sitting on the rocks by his mum and his sister, which was a bit further away, and they were lying face down in the mud. The boy was saying that he thought mum was asleep and just lying there. Where they were, it's going to take us quite a while, up to an hour, half an hour, to get a team in there. So Eagle flew just above, circling, making sure the boy was okay, making sure he felt that somebody was with him.
The 2 bodies were found 200 metres through this dense mangrove swamp. Locals say the incoming tide can reach 5 knots an hour as it comes up the river, and the main channel is up to 3 metres deep at high tide.
It's a tragedy that shouldn't have happened. People need to be equipped when they're going in to these areas. The kids couldn't swim. If they can't swim, they need life jackets. Even if you're not in a boat, a life jacket could have saved their lives here.
The boy and his dad have been reunited, but even their rescuers were struggling to cope with the loss. And Carolyn, such is the sadness behind this tragedy that even the search and rescue personnel, hardened folk, one guy had been working 15 years doing this, when we were asking him questions about what exactly happened, about the rescue, about the search, you could see tears welling up in his eyes. Such was the sadness behind this particular case.
Tristram, can you run through exactly what they were doing out there for us?
Well, Carolyn, it's important to realise that there was no boat involved here. They drove to the beach side, parked up their car, and then basically walked along the mud flats. Now, they probably weren't out very far, we don't know exactly, probably up to 100 metres or so out on the mud. When they started, the tide was out, there was no water in sight. But as the search and rescue team explained to us, sometimes at night, the water can actually come up channels behind you and end up cutting you off while you're out there looking for the flounder.
OK, Tristram Clayton, thank you.
The coffin lid is closing on the political career of David Benson Pope. Labor has selected Claire Curran instead as its candidate to stand at the next election in Dunedin South. Sia Aston is live with that story. Sia.
Well, Alastair, it took 5 hours for the Labour Party's Dunedin South electorate to decide a winner in what was essentially a two-horse race, and it was the favourite who took the title of the reigning champion. This morning he arrived with his family looking supremely confident, but 5 hours later the verdict was delivered and he re-emerged flanked by Labour Party colleagues, defeated but still flying his own flag.
I'm pretty proud of my record of achievement both for the city as a city councillor and as an MP.
Claire Curran followed a few respectful minutes later, victorious but diplomatic.
It's a very big achievement for me. I'm just an ordinary girl from Portobello.
An ordinary girl who's toppled a sitting MP with a 10,000 vote majority. No ordinary achievement. Claire Curran herself, of course, has been under something of a cloud over communications contracts she won with the Ministry for Environment and allegations of political interference that put her there. That prompted a State Services Commission report which cleared her of any wrongdoing, though left the ministry looking less than rosy, and of course implicated David Benson Pope for his part in that. That was just one of the political errors which has led to his meteoric demise. He was once one of the Prime Minister's most trusted henchmen.
What I thought happened in the election campaign was way over the top. I thought both TV1 and TV3, through their main reporters or interviewers, were downright rude, really.
His defence of the Prime Minister in the early days, rewarded by a slew of ministerial positions after a cabinet reshuffle in 2004, all looked to stand the once hugely popular Dunedin South MP in good stead for the future. But that was before a string of incidents, starting with the former secondary school teacher being somewhat slow to tell a full and frank version of events. The first sign of trouble came in 2005 when Benson Pope was stood down from cabinet after allegations he'd physically abused students while teaching at Bayfield High School in the 1980s.
I have not been guilty or involved in any inappropriate behaviour in my 24 years as a secondary school teacher, nor am I aware of any complaint of any kind. What was not appropriate for me to say was that there'd never been a complaint of any kind against me, because clearly they had.
He was on notice and carefully kept out of the limelight for the following year until he was caught out again in 2007. This time he failed to be upfront about his role in the sacking of Environment Ministry Communications Manager Madeline Setchell.
I don't employ staff in the Ministry for the Environment, Duncan.
From the point of view of my office, I will likely be less free and frank in meetings with such a person. That was a statement of the obvious.
Then the loss of the Prime Minister's confidence.
I am disappointed because I expect more.
Finally, Benson Pope resigned from Cabinet in July last year. As one editorial put it, less for what he had done than for his repeated inability to simply say what he'd done.
So, Sia, the question is this the end for Benson Pope then?
Well, I asked that question, to put that to him, what next for him. He refused to answer that directly, though he did remind journalists that he's still the local MP for a few months yet. That, of course, is a far cry from the Cabinet Minister he once was.
And what's Helen Clark saying about the decision to go for Claire Curran?
Well, look, the Prime Minister found out the result of this today via text. That's not unusual. Her response was that she congratulated Claire Curran. She said she's looking forward to working with her. As for David Benson Pope, she said he was a long-serving MP and that today was a sad day for him.
Sia, thanks very much.
It's been a horrific day on the roads with 4 road fatalities in the past 19 hours. East of Taupo, a 42-year-old woman was found dead in her vehicle after it rolled off the road. And in South Auckland, 2 people are dead after a 3-car smash. The smash that was the result of a car clipping another while overtaking. Police say one person was thrown from a vehicle but was later pronounced dead at the scene. The second person died later in hospital. The serious crash unit is investigating. In another crash near Thames, one person died after 2 cars collided. Police say a car flipped onto its roof, killing a passenger at the scene. 6 others were taken to hospital with moderate to minor injuries. The Thames Coast Road was closed for a scene examination for several hours, but has now been reopened. While in Auckland, there was a serious crash between 2 cars and a bus last night. Witnesses told 3 News they saw 2 cars racing down the eastern motorway before crashing into a bus travelling ahead. An occupant of one of the cars was trapped for some time. The roof of the car had to be cut open before the person could be freed.
The country's first two-way public busway connecting Auckland's North Shore to the city had its official opening this morning. The 6.4-kilometre dedicated busway begins, as Rebecca Wright reports, at Constellation Station and links 5 new bus stations through to the Auckland Harbour Bridge. Travelling from Albany to the city is now expected to take 15 minutes.
It took 20 years of planning, 5 years to build. It cost $300 million. And after a few false starts...
3, 2, 1...
The Northern Busway was finally open. Several thousand Aucklanders turned up to the official opening ceremony and took the opportunity to have a close-up look on a public walk between new station Smails Farm and Akoranga. Getting Aucklanders out of their cars and into public transport is the name of the game. Prime Minister Helen Clark believes that if you build it, they will come.
Build it, people will use it. And the quality is so good that I think it's an unbeatable proposition for the commuter.
Close to 17,000 cars move from the North Shore into the city during peak hours. Although Transit aren't able to say exactly how many commuters they expect to give up their cars in favour of the busway.
I wouldn't like to. I think these figures can be, they're a bit like economists. It's, you've got a whole lot of different opinions, but it's definitely going to, as the uptake, it's going to definitely take a lot of vehicles off the road.
But not all bus commuters have access to the busways as a right. School buses servicing the surrounding area will have to apply to Transit before being granted permission.
We're looking at maximising the use of the busway, but we want to really give it a bit of time to settle down and make sure that we don't put anything in the way of what its prime purpose is, so that people are totally confident in what's been built.
Buses begin using the full service tomorrow, but the real test is expected to come with the Monday morning commute. Rebecca Wright, 3 News.
And the news ahead, devastating new methods of terrorism rock Baghdad. Plus hundreds stranded and boats in trouble as wild weather lashes Britain. Plus wildness of another kind as the Sevens ensure Wellington parties hard.
You're back with 3 News. Wellington is firmly in Sevens heaven, and despite 27 arrests in the central city last night, police say it was only slightly busier than a usual Friday night, but they're expecting a bigger Saturday night and say they're all prepared for it. Fiona Owen has more details.
The first night of the Sevens, Courtney Place bars and footpaths throbbed with revellers. There was the dancing, parading and drinking.
We're going to get a little messed up and have a lot of alcohol.
Alcohol, police say, remains the biggest contributing factor when it comes to disorderly behaviour during Sevens weekend. They say rain last night meant it was only slightly busier than usual. In the city, there were 27 arrests. So tonight, drinking will be contained in a fenced-off area. And for the first time during the Sevens, Courtney Place will be closed to traffic.
The volume of pedestrian traffic that we get down here dictates that we really have to start doing this sort of thing to cope with the numbers that we get after the Sevens.
Ticket holders arrived a little more subdued today. Yesterday, 48 people were evicted from the stadium as staff and police showed they meant business.
The police see them committing breaches of the peace, or they're so intoxicated or likely to get into trouble, they have been evicted, and once they're evicted, a lot of them means that their day 2 tickets are cancelled.
None of those evictions were for breaching the costume code.
You can't take our guns! You can't take our guns!
But today a bunch of Rambos set out to test the ban on toy weapons, and security drew first blood. Still, no one has tested the Borat ban, much to the relief of the organisers and police.
The organisers, we've had a meeting and we're quite happy with the standard address this year compared to what was last year. And I think that's, that message has gone out clear and the organisers are very happy.
After the final at 9 tonight, around 8,000 Sevens fans will make their way through the streets of Wellington to the Courtney Place area, where they'll no doubt be under the watchful eye of the police. Fiona Owen, 3 News.
America's Cup sailor Simon Daubney has been cleared of a drug-taking allegation by the International Yachting Federation. The federation has lifted Daubney's suspension after tests last June found metabolites of cocaine. An America's Cup jury had already cleared him of breaking anti-doping rules. Daubney didn't want to comment when 3 News approached him at his home this afternoon. He was one of 5 sailors who defected from Team New Zealand to Alinghi in 2000, and he hopes to return to the team now his name has been cleared.
A 47-year-old man has been charged with assault after a pub brawl in Southland that left another man dead, and the charge is likely to be upgraded. Police were called to Mossburn between Tiano and Lumsden at 2:30 this morning. It's believed the victim died at the scene from injuries sustained during a fight.
A wild 24 hours of storms and freezing temperatures has seen hundreds of people rescued in Britain. Motorists were trapped for hours on snowbound roads. And as Europe correspondent Rachel Smalley reports, a ferry had to be abandoned at sea off the Blackpool coast.
The river dance carries passengers and containers across the Irish Sea. All were left hanging precariously by the huge seas that the storm whipped up. Rescuers arrived to find the river dance listing badly, the 4 passengers and the crew hanging on and helpless.
When we launched, I believe she was probably 8 to 10 miles away from the beach, but the severe weather was taking her that way. I understand that the master of the river dance wasn't in a position to put his anchors out because it was just too. The conditions on deck were just too severe to send his crew down to the bow of the boat to operate the anchors.
As the helicopter hovers above, someone waves for help. The Royal Air Force obliges.
I've been in some big seas out in the Atlantic, but never any that I thought was quite this hairy, to be perfectly honest, that we've had to really think so much about how we're going to execute it.
The rescued were flown to Blackpool, the same place the river dance was ultimately blown ashore. Authorities are still trying to work out how to finish the job by rescuing and refloating her. The bad weather's been forecast for a week, but when heavy snow arrived, it was fast and furious and brought chaos to the roads. In Durham and Cumbria, hundreds of motorists were stranded.
It was just complete whiteout. Couldn't go forward, couldn't go backwards. Just had to stay where we were.
Snowplows are working to reopen many roads, but severe weather warnings remain in place for the weekend. Britain, it seems, is going nowhere fast. Rachel Smalley, 3 News.
Iraq's suicide bombers have come up with a shocking new tactic. They've used 2 mentally disabled women as disposable bomb mules, sending them strapped with explosives into a crowded market and then detonating the bombs by remote control. A warning, this report by ITV's Julian Mannion contains some disturbing images.
It was the sort of carnage that some in Baghdad had begun to hope was in the past. In the worst coordinated bomb attack in the capital for 6 months, powerful blasts ripped through 2 different open-air markets. Once again, flying debris hit human flesh, and the streets were stained with blood. Once again, the familiar cries of despair came from hospitals suddenly flooded with victims. Soon after the dead and injured were carried away, the Iraqi police made a startling announcement. In both blasts, the explosions were carried by women. But according to Iraqi officials, the women were not true suicide bombers, but were mentally disabled. The claim is that they were cynically made to carry the bombs, which were then detonated by remote control. The bombings came after a period in which civilian casualties have sharply declined. In January this year, 466 Iraqi civilians are said to have died in violent attacks. That is just a quarter of the figure of almost 2,000 civilian dead for January a year ago. The Americans are claiming success for their surge, the strategy of pouring in extra troops. But many will see today's events as a signal that Iraq's nightmare is far from over yet.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, a summary of tonight's top stories on 3 News. A fishing trip became the scene of tragedy on the Manukau harbour early this morning. A family of 4 lost 2 of its members, a mother and her 6-year-old daughter. The family began looking for flounder at around 11 o'clock last night and got into trouble at 4 this morning when 3 of them were swept into the mouth of the Whatapaka Inlet.
Embattled MP David Benson Pope is said to be deciding his future after losing the Labour candidacy for his seat of Dunedin South. Public relations consultant Claire Curran run the white to contest the seat ahead of a sitting MP who has a 10,000 vote majority. Mr Benson Pope is yet to declare whether he'll contest the seat as an independent. And we've just got pictures from the scene of a tourist bus crash on the South Island's west coast. The tour bus rolled on State Highway 6 at Charleston, southwest of Westport. 20 passengers were on board the Stray Tours bus when it rolled about 20 metres down a bank at 4 this afternoon. 1 passenger died at the scene and 1 seriously injured person was airlifted from the crash. Those with minor injuries are being treated at Westport Hospital. It's unclear why the bus left the road. The affected section of State Highway 6 remains closed for several hours, but has just been reopened.
Microsoft is trying to snaffle the slumping internet company Yahoo with an unsolicited takeover offer. The offer comes as Microsoft tried to compete with Google in a battle which is likely to define the technology landscape for years to come. Well, the days of time-consuming travel in a cramped tour bus are but a distant memory for heavy metal legends Iron Maiden. They've just kick-started their latest world tour in style, flying in their very own personalised airliner piloted by their very own lead singer. Sky UK's Matt Smith was on board the maiden flight.
Getting heavy metal off the ground is no big deal for Iron Maiden lead singer Bruce Dickinson. Now a fully trained commercial pilot, he's at the controls of the band's new Boeing 757, flying it to India, then round the world on their latest tour. This is no ordinary private jet though, it's more like a functional tour bus. For the first time ever, everything is being loaded onto one plane. Band equipment, roadies and the band themselves. Plus our team too, given exclusive access on board Flight 666. Well, welcome aboard Ed Force One Iron Maiden's personal private plane shipping all their equipment and their crew to their show in India. About 4 hours into the trip, we're due to stop for a refuel in Azerbaijan. That'll give us a chance to chat to the man at the controls, lead singer Bruce Dickinson.
It is completely unique. Nobody's ever done this. The Stones don't go travelling with their road crew, and they certainly don't fly on the freighters that fly their gear. This is everything all rolled up into one.
Although Iron Maiden struggled to get any radio airplay back home, they still fill stadiums around the world. This new plane means they can play more shows in more countries than any other group can. And that's music to the ears of the management.
In one run we've got goes 50,000 people in Mexico City, day off travel to Costa Rica, 27,000 in Costa Rica, day off travel to Bogota, 50,000 in Bogota, day off travel to Sao Paulo. You could not do that. I mean, 4 major stadium shows in a week with in different countries with those distances have been possible to do.
This is only the first flight in a tour that will see the band fly over 100,000 miles. Iron Maiden have officially arrived here in India, and what's more, they've done it all themselves.
In the movies this week, the Oscar heavyweights of Hit Town, the Coen brothers and George Clooney are in a headlock at the box office in the run-up to the Academy Awards. No Country for Old Men is a Coen adaptation of the Cormac McCarthy book, while Michael Clayton is Clooney's first Oscar nomination for Best Actor and the first directorial outing for screenwriter Tony Gilroy. Here is Kate Rodger with Film 3.
I'm looking for Llewellyn Moss.
Do you want to leave a message?
Yes.
No Country for Old Men is a great book, and author Cormac McCarthy a brave man for giving Hollywood another bite of a book after All the Pretty Horses. But he was in safe hands this time. The Coen brothers are back.
You know how this is going to turn out, don't you? Nope. I think you do.
Tommy Lee Jones is a jaded philosophical sheriff. Josh Brolin, our local hero, who chances upon a briefcase full of trouble, and in a role which redefines the bad guy, Javier Bardem is the man with the bowl cut, pretty keen to get his briefcase back, and with the highest possible body count.
Call it friendo.
This film hits the mark on just so many levels, and while it's not for the faint-hearted, Javier Bardem has an R16 neon sign flashing above his head. No Country for Old Men is worth braving the violence for. It's a great story, and it's unravelled in the most enthralling and unexpected way, with some dark and funny moments and some outstanding performances, including not nearly enough of Woody Harrelson and Kelly MacDonald. It's dominating the Oscar nominations for a reason. 4.5 stars from me. You are so spoilt for choice right now, and George Clooney and Tilda Swinton's Oscar-nominated outings in Michael Clayton should be in your must-see list.
Stay in the car, lock the door. What would they do if he went public? Arthur, open the door. What would they do? They're doing it.
From the pen of Tony Gilroy, who treated us to the Bourne trilogy, and now also in the director's chair for the first time, Michael Clayton is a taut psychological thriller with crisp killer dialogue and complete with one of the most satisfying endings in a very long time. Look, I loved every minute, and it's another worthy 4.5 star watch. At the New Zealand box office this week, Cloverfield repeats its US box office plummet, now at 5. No budging Alvin and the Chipmunks, though, still at number 4. Benjamin Park. Tim Burton, Johnny Depp and Sweeney Todd entering the countdown at number 3. Death at a Funeral in second spot.
Take this, Granny!
And Meet the Spartans, What Were You Thinking? That's at number 1 at the New Zealand box office. That's Film 3 for this week. I'm Kate Rodger.
Insure your car with AMI Insurance. And your home, and you can save money. Insure your contents as well, and save even more. For a free multi-saver quote, call 0800 100 200 now. Keep on smiling with multi-saver from AMI Insurance.
G'day there. Well, it was the midriff of the country that enjoyed some welcome cooler temperatures today, coming from a refreshing southerly on the back of a front that came through yesterday. But it's the same one that went through Wellington with a few showers late last night. And as you can see today, though, it's petered out quite nicely. Setting up, you can see a glorious evening for all the superheroes, fairies and cross-dressers at the Wellington Sevens tonight. Speaking of which, there's not too many frills on today's sat map that you'll see. Here's the front that brought the southerly flow with it. As you can see, also it broke up and weakened as it tracked north today. There's another one lining up the southeast and northeast of the country to do it all again Monday and Tuesday. There's Tropical Cyclone Jean staying well put up there, right there, New Caledonia. So another high fits in between those two fronts tomorrow, taking charge of most of the country. There'll still be a few showers generated in the northeast by this fella right there. Bullock gets a couple as well, but that's coming from a separate feature. There's the front for the far south very late tomorrow night. And guess what? Another high building in behind it. So, simple setup for the South Island, apart from a few showers in the north and west and some early cloud in the northeast. It'll be fine for all until that very late front comes through for far Southland well after dark. In the North Island, the few showers around the north and east tonight and tomorrow morning will be clearing in the afternoon. The only other ones to speak of are the heat-generated variety, especially through the middle of the island. Let's have a look around the regions. Not too bad. Those few showers in the north and east tonight and tomorrow morning, like I said, they're pretty skittery ones, just coming off the back of that northbound front. The afternoon ones are your more standard afternoon convection variety. Further south, after a quiet night and a pleasant morning for brunch, plan for that. You really only have to be aware of rather those heat convection showers as well, and there's the heat generating them for the afternoon. Far east, not too bad, especially if you're looking for the fine weather, but I know many of you aren't. There may be a brief shower in the morning in Gisborne. Dannyvirk may get a heat-generated one in the afternoon, but there won't be too much to them at all. On the other side, you'll be unlucky if you see any of those showers in New Plymouth tonight, so plan for it to be fine right through. You may well, more likely, are going to get some of these afternoon showers along with Taumaranui. They're your convection showers. There won't be any showers at all tonight or tomorrow for Nelson. However, the west coast gets them on and off right through the day. Still warm though, temperatures well into the 20s. On the eastern side, the southerlies today, they're all gone, replaced replaced by nor'easters and fairer weather through your day tomorrow. South Canterbury, though, may get a wee localised southerly just in the afternoon to help cool things down from those 27s, 25s. And in the far south, another calm and reasonably quiet night here tomorrow, followed by a similar day tomorrow. There's not a lot of change to that. The change that you'll notice comes well after dark tomorrow as that front makes landfall, hopefully with a few more showers to complement the 30 mils that the farmers got down there yesterday, Friday being. Auckland, fine with decent cloudy spells is the best way to cover off your Sunday tomorrow. The morning clouds harmless, but some heat falls are likely in the afternoon. January was hot and February starting off the same way in the Waikato, with the only relief tomorrow coming from the heat-generated falls in the afternoon as well. Head out for a walk in one and enjoy. The weather will be fine with a feel-good factor for Wellington, but we are expecting there'll be thunderstorms and some localised depressions hanging over more than a few heads as they head off from the 7s tomorrow afternoon. Christchurch, cloudy spells is as bad as it'll get for your Sunday, with perhaps fresh nor'easters in the afternoon. And Dunedin, all fine for you down south for Sunday activities here as well. Just a wee southwest breeze around before the real southerly arrives on Monday. Let's have a look at those next 3 days. Speaking of which, there's the effect of that southerly, creating the showers along this exposed eastern coast. Tuesday, similar sort of setup, but things do start easing back through the day there. And on Wednesday, the sunshine is back in charge nearly everywhere. Just a few showers to clear out in the east. And speaking of the sunshine being back, here she is.
Oh, Mr. Hall, thank you. Finally tonight, a New Zealander living in Melbourne has taken the term takeaways to heart. Literally, he was photographed riding his motorbike down a Melbourne motorway with a barbecue strapped to his body. Here's how he did it. After spotting the barbecue amongst a roadside rubbish collection, he wanted to be identified only as Stuart and admitted to carrying a two-seater couch on his bike once as well.
Waste not, want not, that's what I say.
Absolutely. Well, that is today's News on 3.
Hope you join us tomorrow night at 6. I'm very happy to have you back.
Nice to be here. I'm Carolyn Robinson. Good night.